In the summer of 1992, a young female state trooper set out on a routine patrol in rural Texas. But only a few hours later, her cruiser was found abandoned on a lonely stretch of desert highway. The lights were still flashing. The driver's door was wide open. Her radio worked. Her gun was missing, and she had completely vanished. For 8 years, her family begged for answers while rumors spread like wildfire. Some said it was a cartel hit. Others believed a stalker grabbed her, and some whispered that maybe someone inside the department knew exactly what happened. Then, almost a decade later, a hunter stumbled across an old shack buried in the Texas desert. What he discovered inside would finally reveal the truth and shock the entire state. This is the story of betrayal, silence, and a badge that was never meant to be found. Stick around, because once you hear what was uncovered, you'll never look at law enforcement the same way again. And before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where in the world you're watching from. It is 1992 in rural Texas. Inside a small station, a young female state trooper gets ready for another long shift. Her uniform is crisp, pressed perfectly, the kind that shows she takes her job seriously. She pins on her badge with steady hands. It shines under the fluorescent light, but her eyes look tired. There is a quiet weight in her face, the kind that tells you she's carrying more than just the duty of the job. She checks her sidearm, makes sure her belt is secured, and pulls her wide-brimmed hat down tight. In the mirror, she looks strong, brave, exactly what a trooper should look like. But inside, she knows the work is wearing her down. Being one of the few women in her department, she feels she has to prove herself twice as much as the men. She does not complain, she does not back down, but the pressure never really leaves her. Other officers pass by, joking loudly, sharing stories. She smiles politely, but she doesn't join in. She knows tonight she'll be out there alone, driving endless miles of desert highway. No backup close by, just her, the radio, and the open road. Before leaving, she pauses. She glances at a family photo taped inside her locker. It's worn, edges curling, but it's the one thing that reminds her why she keeps going. She whispers something under her breath. Then she shuts the locker door. Walking out, she nods at her sergeant, checks out her cruiser, and starts the engine. The lights flick on. The car hums. She's ready for another night. From the outside, she looks fearless. Inside, there's an unease she doesn't show anyone. She has no idea this will be her last patrol. The Texas desert at night is wide and empty. Her cruiser slices through the darkness, headlights stretching across the sand. The road feels endless, the kind of place where silence is louder than sound. Her radio crackles with short bursts of chatter. Other troopers checking in, dispatch giving quick updates. But between those calls, it's just quiet. She grips the wheel, eyes scanning the highway for speeders, stranded drivers, or anything suspicious. Every few miles, she passes small gas stations with flickering neon signs, a truck stop with two rigs parked outside, a dark motel where only one window glows. She slows down, watching carefully, then drives on. The desert feels alive in its own way. Coyotes howl somewhere in the distance. Wind pushes sand across the asphalt, but mostly it's empty. She thinks about her family, about the people she waved goodbye to earlier, about how far away they feel when she's out here alone. She adjusts the radio volume, more for comfort than need. Hours drag on. She sips cold coffee from a thermos, checking her mirrors often. Every headlight that approaches makes her sit up straighter, hand close to her sidearm. Every vehicle she pulls behind could mean nothing or something dangerous. She radios in her location, voice steady, professional. Unit 14, Highway 90 eastbound, all clear. Dispatch acknowledges. She sighs, leaning back slightly, the desert road unrolling ahead. But the silence never feels safe. Out here, trouble doesn't announce itself. It can come fast from anyone, anywhere. The clock on her dash ticks past midnight. The road is empty again, just her headlights and the darkness. She glances at her hat on the passenger seat, takes another sip of coffee, and drives on. Somewhere in the vast night, she doesn't know she's being watched. The sun finally dips below the desert horizon, leaving the sky a deep shade of blue. She adjusts her mirror, takes a sip of water and presses the gas. The highway stretches endlessly ahead, no traffic in sight. Only the sound of the engine and the faint hum of the radio fill the space. Her headlights cut through the darkness, two bright beams slicing across the empty desert. The road feels endless, as if it's pulling her deeper into isolation. She checks her speed, then glances at her side mirror. Nothing but blackness behind her. The radio crackles with occasional chatter from other units, but she remains mostly silent. She makes one routine call to dispatch. Unit 14, eastbound, all clear. The words are calm, professional, the same as always. Dispatch replies, logging the time. That single exchange becomes the last confirmed moment anyone hears from her. Inside the cruiser, she shifts in her seat, fatigue pressing against her. The air is cool from the vents, but the silence outside feels heavy. For miles, there's nothing, no headlights, no taillights, just desert stretching in every direction. She taps the steering wheel, a quiet habit to stay awake. Her mind drifts for a moment, maybe thinking of her family, maybe about the shift ahead. But she keeps her eyes on the road, duty pushing her forward. At this point, nothing seems out of place. It's just another long night on patrol. Yet within hours, her life will vanish from this stretch of highway, swallowed by the very desert she was sworn to protect. The time on the log reads shortly after 9 p.m. That is the last trace of her. One short call, then silence. Hours later, the desert highway looks the same, silent, endless, and empty. But another trooper driving westbound notices something strange ahead. Flashing lights cut through the darkness. As he gets closer, he sees it, her cruiser, pulled to the side of the road. The headlights are still on. The red and blue lights still spin against the sand, painting the desert in eerie flashes of color. He slows down, pulls in behind the car, and steps out. The desert wind is sharp, carrying only the sound of the flashing lights. He calls her name, but there's no answer. The driver's side door is closed. The engine is running. Papers sit neatly on the dashboard. Her radio is in place. Everything looks normal except she's not there. He circles the car, shining his flashlight across the sand. No footprints, no sign of a struggle, just the cruiser idling as if abandoned in the middle of her shift. The trooper calls dispatch, his voice tense. "We've got a unit unmanned. Officer not present." Within minutes, the scene is swarming. Other officers arrive, their lights cutting through the desert night. They search the immediate area but find nothing. It's as if she simply stepped out of her car and vanished into thin air. The cruiser is left sitting on the roadside, a haunting image that will stick in the memory of every officer who saw it that night. This was no ordinary disappearance. Something had happened, something violent, something hidden. And from this moment, her case would become one of the most chilling mysteries the Texas Highway Patrol had ever faced. Investigators step closer to the cruiser, careful not to disturb the scene. The interior light glows faintly, showing the inside is untouched. Her logbook rests on the passenger seat. Her radio is switched on, still set to her assigned channel. But when they check her duty belt, they notice something alarming. It's still clipped around the driver's seat, but the service weapon is missing. The holster is empty. For any officer, this is the most unsettling detail. Troopers never go anywhere without their gun. It's the last thing they would leave behind. If her weapon is gone, it means one of two things. Either she drew it herself or someone forced it away from her. Detectives exchange uneasy looks. They scan the immediate area with flashlights, hopping to catch a glint of metal in the dirt, but the weapon is nowhere in sight. The realization sinks in. She didn't simply walk off. Something forced her from this car. Her radio, still functional, shows no distress call was ever made. No 1033 code. No cry for backup. She had no chance to send a warning. The cruiser sits like a ghostly reminder of routine broken in an instant. An officer missing, her weapon gone. It's the first undeniable sign that this isn't a case of someone stepping away. This is the start of something far darker. Officers fan out from the cruiser, scanning the roadside shoulder. The wind kicks sand against their boots as their flashlights sweep across the ground. Then, one deputy freezes. Just a few feet from the car lies something unmistakable, her wide-brimmed campaign hat. It's face down in the dirt, half covered in dust as if it had been dropped suddenly. The edges are bent, the band loosened, grit pressed into the fabric. Everyone knows how important that hat is. Troopers don't casually remove it, especially not on duty. It's a symbol of the uniform, something worn with pride. For it to be lying discarded beside the road is a chilling detail. The officer carefully picks it up, brushing away sand. There are no blood stains, no visible damage, but it feels wrong in his hands, like an artifact left behind from a struggle. He holds it high, calling to the others, "We've got something." The hat becomes the only physical trace that she was ever here. No footprints, no drag marks, no tire tracks leading away. Just the car, the missing gun, and this hat in the dirt. For investigators, the message is clear. She didn't walk away from this scene willingly. Something violent and sudden happened on this stretch of highway, and whatever it was, it left behind only silence. The call goes out across the radio. Unit missing. Cruiser found abandoned. All units respond. Within minutes, the highway comes alive. Red and blue lights cut through the black desert. Sirens echo across the empty night. Troopers push their engines hard, racing toward the scene. One by one, patrol cars line up behind the stranded cruiser. Their flashing lights bounce off the sand, turning the desert into a glowing crime scene. The officers step out, scanning the darkness. Guns are unholstered. Flashlights beam in every direction. The first order is clear: secure the area. They move in tight circles, checking ditches, peering into the brush, calling her name over and over. The only reply is wind. Every detail feels wrong. The cruiser sits humming, untouched, her hat in the dirt, the missing weapon, and not a single sign of where she went. Dispatch radios again, asking for updates. A trooper's voice comes back tense. No visual, officer not located, expanding perimeter. More units arrive, headlights pointing like spotlights across the barren land. The search begins to stretch outward, men walking in lines, boots crunching against the sand. But as the minutes pass, dread spreads through the ranks. This isn't a routine call anymore. This is a disappearance. By midnight, the search expands. Helicopters thunder overhead, rotors shaking the desert air. From above, spotlights pour down like white fire, sweeping across the sand. Officers below shield their eyes as beams move slowly across the ground, illuminating miles of emptiness. If she walked away, her prints should be visible. But the sand is clean. No tracks, no signs of struggle, nothing. The dogs are brought in. Bloodhounds strain at their leashes, noses low, pulling toward the cruiser. Handlers release them and the dogs fan out, sniffing along the roadside, circling the car, then moving into the open desert. Minutes later, the handlers call back. The dogs lost the scent almost instantly. It ends near the cruiser as if she vanished right there. The helicopter crew's radio updates. Negative visual, no heat signatures. The desert is cold, flat, and lifeless. Troopers on the ground grow restless. They expected something, a jacket, a footprint, a trail of any kind. But the desert offers only silence. By 3 a.m., the perimeter has stretched for miles. Officers shout her name into the darkness, voices echoing back empty. The only sound left is the steady thump of helicopter blades above. It feels impossible. An officer can't just disappear in the middle of her shift. And yet tonight she has. By dawn, the scene has shifted into a full-scale search operation. Patrol cars line the highway shoulder. Officers stand in clusters, drinking coffee from paper cups, their faces tense. Everyone is waiting for the dogs. A van pulls up, and handlers step out with bloodhounds. The animals bark and pull at their leashes, eager to work. Their noses are trained for exactly this kind of job, finding a missing person. The first dog is led to her cruiser. The handler presses the animal's nose to the seat and says a single word: "Search." The dog lunges forward, pulling hard, sniffing around the car, circling the front, the back, the dirt. For a moment there's hope. The dog charges off toward the brush, but after only a few yards it slows. The nose sweeps left, right, then it circles back toward the cruiser. Another dog is brought in, same process. Nose to the seat, nose to the hat in the dirt. Again the dog bolts out, then loops back. It spins in circles, tail stiff, then sits down. Trail lost. The third and fourth dogs do the exact same thing. They sniff, they search, but always they return to the same spot, the cruiser itself. Handlers shake their heads. They've seen this before. It usually means one thing: the person never walked away on foot. Troopers gather around, staring at the empty highway. If she didn't walk off, then how was she taken? And why is there nothing left behind? One officer mutters what everyone is thinking. It's like she disappeared straight into the air. With the dogs failing, the search expands even further. By midday, the desert is filled with people. Troopers, deputies, border patrol agents, even local ranchers and volunteers, all lined up shoulder to shoulder. The line stretches across the horizon. Dozens of flashlights point down at the sand. Every few feet, someone calls her name. Trooper, trooper. The voices echo, carried away by the hot wind. They step in rhythm, slow and steady. Boots drag through the sand, leaving a checkerboard of prints. Every rock, every bush, every small ditch is inspected. If there's a sign, they want to find it. But the desert offers nothing. No blood, no shell casings, no tracks of a second vehicle, just endless sand, flat and stubborn. Helicopters circle overhead, relaying images to command. The wide shots confirm what the boots on the ground already know. There's nothing here. Hours pass. The line keeps moving, voices growing hoarse. The sun beats down, draining energy. Volunteers peel off, exhausted, but more step in to take their place. At one point, a deputy picks up something small, a piece of cloth caught on a cactus spine. For a moment, hearts race. But when it's checked, it's just trash blown in by the wind. By nightfall, hundreds of people have combed the desert for miles in every direction. And still, not a single clue is found. The searchers regroup near the cruiser. Faces are grim, uniforms stained with sweat and dust. One trooper looks at the flashing lights still spinning on the abandoned car and whispers, "She was right here. How can she be gone?" No one has an answer. With the desert giving up nothing, detectives turn their focus to the highways. They break into teams, spreading out to every gas station, truck stop, and motel within 50 miles. At a dusty service station, an investigator holds up her photo. "Did you see her? Was she here tonight?" The clerk squints, shakes his head. Nothing. Another team rewinds surveillance footage from a truck stop. Grainy black and white cameras show trucks fueling, drivers buying coffee, families filling up on long road trips. They scroll frame by frame, eyes sharp for her face, her uniform, or her cruiser. Hours of footage pass. She never appears. Every motel is checked. Desk clerks look uneasy as police show up with her picture. No one remembers seeing her. No registry matches her name. Detectives know that if she left the highway, someone would have noticed. A trooper in full uniform doesn't just vanish into a crowd, but every light hits the same wall. Nothing. By late night, the reports pile up, all negative. No camera shows her. No witness remembers her. It's as if she never left her cruiser at all. The case, once urgent, now grows stranger. With no trace locally, investigators fear the worst. The Mexican border isn't far, and drug smugglers rule the desert corridors. If someone ambushed her, they could have dragged her south before anyone realized she was missing. Border Patrol agents are alerted. Her photo is faxed to every checkpoint, every guard station. Radios buzz with updates. "Watch for this trooper. If a vehicle came through late last night, check it." Agents scan footage from border crossings. Dozens of cars, trucks, and buses pass through. But again, there's no sign of her. Helicopters sweep the Rio Grande, searching for abandoned cars or shallow graves. Nothing. Rumors spread quickly among the troopers. Some whisper that cartel members may have spotted her patrolling alone and taken her. Others think it was a planned hit, designed to send a message. Still, no evidence proves it. No smuggler brags. No informant talks. The desert south of the highway stays silent. By the end of the week, investigators are left staring at the map, circles of search areas growing wider. Whether she was taken across the border or vanished closer to home, one fact remains: there is no trace of her anywhere. As the search drags into its second week, investigators still have nothing. The public begins demanding answers. Reporters swarm the small Texas town where the trooper's family lives. One evening, her parents finally step in front of the cameras. The father, usually quiet, looks pale and exhausted. He holds a picture of his daughter in uniform, the same one now plastered across news stations. The mother clutches his arm, shaking. When the microphones push closer, her voice breaks. "Please," she begs, tears streaming down her face. "Please bring her home. She's our only girl. We just want her safe." Her plea plays across every channel that night. Viewers see a broken family begging the public for help. Some call in tips. Others flood the police department with rumors. The father tries to stay composed. He thanks the officers for their search and prays aloud that she is still alive. But his eyes give away what his words don't doubt is creeping in. Behind the scenes, the family holds vigils. Neighbors gather with candles, standing in silence outside the small house. A porch light is left on, night after night, in case she finds her way back. For the family, it's unbearable. They see the endless coverage, but no real progress. Each day that passes feels like proof that she's slipping further away. On TV, her mother's desperate words echo, "Please, whoever you are, just let her go." The nation listens, but the desert keeps its silence. With no answers from police, the case begins to twist in the public eye. News anchors speculate live on air. Talk radio hosts invite callers to share theories. The story of the vanished trooper spreads far beyond Texas. Some believe it was a simple ambush. Maybe she pulled over the wrong car, a drug runner or a desperate fugitive, and never stood a chance. Others point to the cartel. This is border country after all. Perhaps she was targeted on purpose, her disappearance a message to law enforcement. But the most disturbing theory begins closer to home. People whisper, what if she trusted the wrong person? An ex-boyfriend, a colleague, maybe even another officer. Someone who knew her roots. Someone she wouldn't suspect. The lack of evidence fuels the speculation. Every gap in the timeline, every detail about her life is pulled apart by strangers. Reporters dig into her past, uncovering small arguments, broken relationships, late-night patrol partners. Police hold press conferences urging patience, but the rumors only grow louder. She didn't just disappear, one local says. Somebody knows something. They're hiding it. Inside the department, morale begins to crack. Officers don't like hearing whispers that one of their own could be involved. Yet no one can disprove it. Theories multiply. But the truth, whatever it is, remains buried under sand, secrets, and silence. 8 days after her disappearance, the case has gone from tragedy to legend. A trooper vanished, and no one can explain how. With no leads in the desert, detectives turn their attention to her life. They pull out boxes of files, her duty logs, her daily schedules, even her personal records. If she was targeted, there has to be a clue. First, they check her patrol history. Dozens of traffic stops, routine tickets, a few arrests. Nothing jumps out until they notice several encounters with dangerous men. She had stopped drug runners, reckless drivers, even fugitives. Each one is reviewed. Then detectives move to her personal life. They learn she kept to herself. No marriage, no children. A few relationships that ended badly. Friends describe her as tough, focused, and proud. But behind the uniform, she was tired, often lonely. Detectives also look at her notes from the weeks before she disappeared. In the margins of her reports, there are small details. Driver aggressive, subject resisted, repeat contact. Simple words, but they raise questions. Did one of these people come back for revenge? The more they dig, the more it seems she might have made enemies, the kind who don't forget. For investigators, one case in particular stands out. A traffic stop that happened just weeks before she vanished. Weeks before her disappearance, she pulled over a car late at night. The driver was a known gang member with a violent record. He had priors for assault, drug trafficking, and resisting arrest. The stop quickly turned tense. She called for backup after the man refused to step out of the vehicle. When another trooper arrived, the gang member was finally pulled out and searched. In his car, they found drugs, weapons, and gang symbols scrawled on the dashboard. He was arrested, processed, and later released on bail. But according to officers who worked the scene, he glared at her the entire time, promising she would regret this. Detectives circle back to this case after her disappearance. Could this man have followed through on his threat? Did his gang target her to send a message? They re-interview the suspect. He denies everything, says he was nowhere near the highway the night she vanished. His alibi: he was at a party across town with friends. The friends back him up. Still, investigators aren't convinced. His rage at being pulled over was real, and gangs in the area are known for violence against police. The theory spreads inside the department. Maybe she crossed the wrong person, and they waited for their chance. But as detectives dig deeper, something doesn't add up. If this was a gang hit, there should be evidence, a trail, a message, something left behind. Yet the desert gave nothing. The gang member remains on the list of suspects, but there are others, people even closer to her, people who may have had more to hide. Detectives soon turn their attention to someone outside her work, her ex-boyfriend. His name comes up quickly when friends are interviewed. They describe him as a man with a short fuse, the jealous type, who never liked her demanding career. When investigators knock on his door, he looks nervous. He tells them he hasn't seen her in weeks and that he was home the night she vanished. Alone, his alibi feels thin. Detectives ask about their relationship. He admits they fought often. He hated her long hours and didn't like the attention she got in uniform. He thought other men were after her. Their arguments became so heated that she finally ended things, just months before disappearing. Friends recall her telling them she was worried he might show up uninvited. He had a temper, and sometimes it scared her. When detectives press him harder, his story begins to wobble. First, he says he stayed home all night. Later, he claims he went out for a drive, but he can't remember where. His timeline doesn't match up. A search of his car and home turns up nothing. No weapon, no signs of struggle, no connection to the desert highway where she vanished. But his shaky alibi keeps him on the list. Detectives also learn he had called her just days before the disappearance, asking to meet. She refused. That call suddenly feels important. Was he angry enough to follow her that night? Forensic teams comb through his phone records, looking for pings near her last known location. Nothing concrete. Still, the suspicion lingers. The ex-boyfriend denies any involvement, insisting he loved her and would never hurt her. Detectives aren't convinced, but without hard proof, he can't be charged. With pressure mounting, investigators widen their focus again. This time, the spotlight shifts back to the department itself, and to one of her own fellow officers. In the days after her disappearance, whispers begin to spread inside the department. Troopers talk quietly among themselves about one of their own, a fellow officer who, according to some, was too close to her. Detectives dig into the rumor. They learn this trooper often volunteered to work the same shifts as her. He lingered around her desk. He made comments that others thought crossed the line. Nothing illegal, but enough to cause tension. When questioned, he admits they were friends. She was easy to talk to, he says, but he denies anything romantic. According to him, their relationship was strictly professional. Still, colleagues remember arguments between them. Some describe heated exchanges out on patrol. Others recall awkward silence in the break room. One officer says he noticed her looking uncomfortable when the trooper was around. Detectives check his alibi for the night she vanished. He claims he was at home with his wife. His wife confirms it, but detectives notice cracks. His phone records show his cell pinging near a tower just miles from the desert highway, the same night her cruiser was found. When asked about it, he explains he drove out briefly to clear his head after a fight with his wife. Coincidence, he insists, but for investigators it raises alarms. They search his vehicle and his locker. Nothing links him directly to the disappearance. No fibers, no traces, no weapon, but suspicion grows inside the ranks. Could a fellow trooper have betrayed one of their own? The department is divided. Some defend him fiercely, saying he's loyal and would never harm a colleague. Others quietly admit they always thought his behavior was off. The rumor spreads beyond law enforcement, reaching the media. Headlines speculate about an officer connection. The public begins to wonder, was this an inside job? Detectives keep the trooper under surveillance. Every move, every call, every shift is watched. But again, no hard evidence surfaces. just suspicion, just rumors. The possibility of betrayal of someone in uniform being responsible shakes the department to its core. For her family, it's unbearable. They trusted the badge to protect her. Now they're forced to consider the unthinkable. As weeks drag on with no clear answers, the investigation begins to shift inward. Detectives notice that not all officers are as united as they appear on the surface. Some begin talking quietly, off the record. One trooper admits he doesn't fully trust everyone in the department. Another mentions that the missing trooper had been worried about certain colleagues, that she felt she was being watched even inside the station. The whispers grow darker. Detectives hear about cover-ups in the past, misconduct swept under the rug, incidents never logged properly. Nothing directly tied to her case, but enough to create doubt. A retired officer even hints that loyalty in the department isn't always about justice. Sometimes it's about protecting one another, no matter the cost. The possibility of betrayal spreads like a shadow over the case. Could someone in uniform have silenced her? And if so, how many others knew about it? Detectives are careful, knowing one wrong move could cause officers to close ranks. But the suspicion is there now, impossible to ignore. For the first time, investigators begin to wonder if the truth about her disappearance has been locked inside the department itself. Her family, watching the investigation from the outside, begins to feel something isn't right. At first, they believed the department would fight to find her. But as weeks turn into months, that trust starts to fade. Her parents notice how the story keeps changing. First, detectives suggest cartel involvement. Then they focus on her ex-boyfriend. Then rumors about another trooper. Each lead collapses. Each time, the family is left with more questions than answers. Her mother becomes vocal in front of cameras, asking why the department can't find one of their own. Her father grows bitter, saying the system seems more interested in protecting itself than protecting the truth. When they press state officials for updates, they receive polite but vague answers, promises of progress, assurances that every lead is being followed. But behind closed doors, they start asking the question no one wants to say out loud. Was this covered up? The idea is painful, but it gnaws at them. If someone inside the department was involved, then the people running the investigation may have every reason to stall. The family demands an outside review. They want fresh eyes, someone not tied to local law enforcement. But red tape slows the process, and months continue to slip by. Their grief shifts into determination. If the system won't give them answers, they will keep pushing until it does. For the family, suspicion of betrayal becomes the hardest wound of all. Losing her is unbearable, but losing faith in the badge she wore is something they never thought they'd face. Every year on the same night she vanished, her family gathers in the town square. People from the community join them, holding candles. The warm glow cuts through the Texas night. At the center, a framed photo of the missing trooper rests on a table. Her parents stand in front, voices shaking as they speak. They thank everyone for coming. They remind them that their daughter is still missing, still out there somewhere. They beg the public not to forget. Each vigil feels heavier than the last. The first year, the crowd is large. Neighbors, classmates, even officers from surrounding towns attend. By the third year, fewer show up. By the sixth year, only close family and a handful of loyal friends remain. Still, the parents refuse to stop. As long as we stand here with these candles, her father says one year, she's not forgotten. The vigils become tradition. The flames flicker in silence, sometimes carried by the wind, sometimes dripping wax onto tired hands. People bow their heads and whisper prayers. Each year ends the same way. Candles slowly burn out, leaving darkness behind. The family drives home again, still with no answers. Back at their small home, her mother starts a ritual of her own. Every night she switches on the front porch light before bed. It shines through the night, glowing across the yard, waiting for someone who never comes. Neighbors notice it. They see the same bulb burning year after year. Some quietly admire her strength. Others whisper that she should let go, but her mother never gives in. She tells reporters once, "If my daughter finds her way home, I want her to know we never stopped waiting." The porch light becomes a symbol. Friends who drive past the house glance at it and remember. Family members see it and feel the ache of loss all over again. Even strangers in town begin to recognize the light as part of her story. Bulbs burn out, fixtures need replacing, but still, every night without fail it shines. It is not hope exactly. It is more stubborn than that, a refusal to let silence win. Through storms, through long summers, through endless years, the light stays on, a beacon for a daughter lost in the dark. Inside the department, things slowly change. The first months after her disappearance, every officer whispers about it. Patrol partners talk late at night, wondering who could have done it. Detectives argue over theories. Her picture hangs on the bulletin board, a reminder of the unfinished case. But as the years drag on, the whispers fade. The bulletin board changes. New cases pile up. Her file gets pushed into storage. Older officers begin to assume she is gone for good. Some say it quietly with sadness. Others admit it openly. They believe she was murdered and buried in the desert. No one can prove it, so no one says it in public. New recruits join the force. They only know her name from training materials. To them, she is not a coworker they lost. She is a cautionary story, a line in a lesson about safety. The Brotherhood of Troopers keeps moving forward. Radios buzz, patrol cars roll, shifts are covered, lives go on. But in the quiet corners of the station, her absence is still felt. A locker left empty, a badge number retired, a story no one can finish. In the back office of the station, a thick case file sits on a shelf. The binder is stuffed with reports, interviews, maps, and photos. In the early days, detectives opened it every hour, flipping through pages, chasing every detail. Now it just sits there. The edges of the papers are yellowing. Some reports are bent, dog-eared from being handled so much years earlier. A layer of dust gathers on the cover. New officers walk past it without even noticing. Every once in a while, a detective reaches for it, flips it open, and scans the pages. But it always ends the same way. They close it again, shaking their head. There are no new leads, no new evidence. Just the same story, stuck on repeat. The case file becomes a symbol of defeat. It's there to remind everyone that sometimes, even with all the training and resources in the world, the truth can slip away. But in the silence of that back office, the file waits. And inside, the answers to what happened to the missing trooper may already be buried, overlooked, forgotten just like her. In her hometown, people still talk about her. At the diner on Main Street, old men sip coffee and trade theories about what happened. Some believe she was taken by the cartel. Others swear she must have been betrayed by someone she trusted. At the local bar, bartenders remember how she used to stop by after long shifts. They tell new customers stories about her, how she always wore her uniform with pride, how she was tougher than she looked. Shop owners recall seeing her walk in for groceries, nodding politely, always in a rush. Old friends share quieter memories, like high school football games or nights out before she joined the force. Everyone has an opinion, and the theories only grow with time. Some believe she ran away. Others think she's buried somewhere in the desert, just waiting to be found. Years pass, but the whispers never stop. In that small Texas town, her name still carries weight. People lower their voices when they talk about her, as if the mystery itself is listening. The town may have moved on with daily life, but deep down, they all know. Her story isn't finished. With so many years gone and no answers, her story slowly shifts from fact to legend. In town, people tell it like folklore, each version bending in new directions. Some whisper she fell in love with someone in secret, a man no one knew about, and ran away to start a new life. She wanted freedom, a local woman once claimed at a grocery store. She just left everything behind. Others paint darker pictures. Bartenders share hushed stories of cartel killers, saying they buried her in the desert as punishment for stopping the wrong car. The more the story spreads, the scarier it becomes. Truck drivers passing through add their own theories. She was kidnapped, forced across the border, or hidden somewhere no one will ever find. Teenagers dare each other to drive down the lonely stretch of highway where her cruiser was found, calling it haunted. The truth is long gone in the noise. Myths grow bigger than facts, and everyone seems to have their own version of what happened. Her name becomes less about a person, more about a mystery no one can solve. By the late 1990s, the case feels more like a ghost story than an investigation. Detectives no longer talk about it. New officers barely know her name. Her family still tries, but even they feel the years weighing down. Her father admits quietly to a friend, maybe she's gone, maybe we'll never know. Her mother keeps the porch light on, but her eyes show the truth: hope is fading. Still, they can't fully let go. Each time the phone rings late at night, they pause. Each time an unknown car slows down outside their house, they look up. Some part of them still waits for her. But deep down, they know, it's been too long. The chances of seeing her alive are almost gone. In the year 2000, a lone hunter set out across the Texas desert. He was miles from the highway, following tracks in the dirt. He wasn't after anything big, mostly rabbits and quail, but the desert always drew him farther than he planned. The sun was sinking low. The air was dry and still. Each step crunched against sand and rock. His boots kicked up small clouds of dust as he walked. He paused often, scanning the ground. A broken set of animal tracks led him in a winding line. He adjusted his rifle strap, kept his canteen close, and pressed on. Out here there was nothing but silence. No houses, no cars, just wide open desert. The hunter knew these parts well. He'd explored here for years, but on this trip he wandered deeper than usual. After a while he realized he was standing in a place he'd never seen before. The tracks disappeared. The land was empty. He considered turning back, but something on the horizon caught his eye, a shape where there should be none. It wasn't rock, it wasn't brush. It looked man-made, something old, something forgotten. The hunter narrowed his eyes, adjusted his hat, and walked toward it. As he drew closer, the shape grew clearer. It wasn't just a shadow, it was a structure. Half buried in sand, a broken wooden shack leaned against the horizon. Its roof sagged to one side. Boards were missing from the walls. The door hung crooked, swinging gently in the wind. The hunter slowed his steps. The shack looked ancient, left to rot for years. Desert storms had stripped the wood to a gray, splintered frame. Sand piled against its sides, as if the desert itself had tried to swallow it whole. He circled slowly, keeping a hand on his rifle. The windows were smashed out. Rusty nails jutted from the beams. It didn't look safe to step inside, but curiosity pulled at him. He wondered who had built it and why. There were no roads nearby, no reason for anyone to be out here. The place felt wrong, out of place in the emptiness. As he walked closer, a faint smell drifted out. Foul, heavy, sour. It wasn't the smell of animals, it was something else, something worse. The hunter's chest tightened. His boots sank into the sand as he moved toward the doorway, heart pounding with unease. Whatever this shack was, it held a secret, and he was about to see it. The hunter pushed the crooked door and stepped inside. At once, the smell hit him. It was sharp, sour, and foul, the kind of stench that made the back of his throat tighten. He pulled his shirt over his nose, but it barely helped. The air inside was heavy and still. Dust floated in thin beams of sunlight that cut through the broken roof. The floor groaned beneath his boots. Loose boards shifted, some half buried in drifts of sand. The hunter froze, eyes scanning the room. Old cans lay rusted in a corner. A broken chair leaned against the wall. Nothing looked alive. But the smell, it was stronger now, clinging to the air, pressing down on him. He took another cautious step. His boot hit something under the sand. It felt hard, not like wood or stone. He crouched, brushing sand aside with his hand. The foul odor grew sharper. His heart started to pound. He pulled back, suddenly unsure if he wanted to see what was hidden here. But curiosity kept him still. Something in this shack had been here a long time, something dead, and now he was standing right on top of it. He steadied himself and kicked at the boards again. Sand shifted, sliding across the floor in thin waves. Something pale glinted faintly in the dim light. The hunter crouched low. With his hand he scraped more sand aside. What appeared was small at first, a curve of something smooth, almost white. He thought it might be animal remains, maybe a cow bone, but the shape was too thin, too delicate. He pushed harder, clearing more of the floor. Soon more bones came into view. A hand, fingers, a partial skull with teeth still in place. The hunter's breath caught. These weren't animal bones, these were human. The smell made sense now. It wasn't new death. It was the long, slow decay of something left to rot for years. His pulse hammered in his ears. He stepped back, wiping sweat from his face, trying to breathe through his shirt. The desert was supposed to be empty, but here, inside a half-buried shack, he had uncovered someone's grave. And these bones weren't buried deep. They were scattered, almost left behind, as if whoever put them here never cared if they were found. The hunter's call brought them out fast. By late afternoon, patrol cars lined the dirt road. Their lights flashed red and blue across the barren sand. Officers moved carefully, boots crunching on the dry ground as they stepped inside the shack. No one spoke at first. The air felt too heavy. Crime scene tape went up. Evidence markers were dropped, one by one. Flashbulbs lit the dark corners as detectives snapped photos of the scene. Every step was slow, deliberate. Two officers crouched near the bones. They used small brushes to clear away the sand, lifting fragments and placing them gently into bags. Gloves snapped. Pens scratched on clipboards. The silence inside the shack was sharp, broken only by the click of cameras and the soft scrape of tools against wood. Even seasoned investigators seemed shaken. No one said it out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. These bones had been here a long time, long enough that whoever put them here probably thought they'd never be found. As the remains were carried out one piece at a time, the desert wind picked up, whistling through the broken boards. It sounded almost like a voice, echoing across the empty land. Once the bones were collected, the team focused on the floor. Sand was sifted through screens. Every handful seemed to hide something. The first object appeared half buried in the corner, a rusted handgun. Its barrel was clogged with dirt, the metal eaten away by time. It was tagged and bagged. Next, a frayed leather belt surfaced, stiff from age. The buckle clinked against a shovel blade as it was lifted. Then came scraps of cloth, faded, torn, nearly unrecognizable. Detectives knelt, laying the pieces out, trying to make sense of what they once were. Maybe part of a uniform, maybe not. One by one, these fragments were collected, photographed, and sealed. Nothing was ignored. Every piece mattered, no matter how small. The shack grew emptier with each discovery. Yet the more they found, the more unsettling the place became. It was clear this wasn't just where someone had died. It was where someone had been left, hidden away, forgotten under sand and silence. By the time the sun dipped low, the shack stood hollow. The team packed up their evidence, leaving only the echo of what had been uncovered. As the last boards were lifted, one detective's boot scuffed against something hard in the sand. He stopped, crouched, and brushed the dirt away with his gloved hand. At first it looked like just another rock, but the shape was too clean, too round. He pulled more sand aside and a small, tarnished circle began to shine through the dust. The team leaned in. What he held up next froze the entire shack. It was a badge, a state trooper badge. The numbers were worn, the surface scratched and weathered, but it was still clear. Her badge. For years, the trooper's name had been a question mark. For years, her family had prayed for answers. And now, buried in this forgotten shack, the badge gave one. Detectives stood silent, staring at it as if the weight of everything had finally landed in their hands. The bag it was sealed in was marked evidence, high priority. Everyone knew this was no random discovery. This was the missing piece. Her badge in the dirt was proof she had been here. The news broke before the evidence truck even cleared the desert road. Radio stations were the first to report it. Remains believed to be missing Texas state trooper discovered in a desert shack. By evening, every TV anchor in the state repeated the same headline. The trooper who had vanished 8 years earlier was no longer just a mystery. She had been found. In her hometown, people gathered outside the diner, the grocery store, even the church. Whispers turned to tears. Some hugged, others shook their heads in disbelief. The family was swarmed with cameras. Her mother, clutching a framed photo, sobbed into microphones. "We wanted her home, but not like this." Grief rolled through the town like a wave, and with it came something else, outrage. How could this have gone unsolved for so long? Why had her remains been left in the desert, in a shack anyone could have stumbled upon? Questions spread faster than the answers. For the first time in years, her name wasn't fading into silence. It was everywhere. The town that had never forgot was alive with grief and fury. The discovery of the shack changed everything. For years, her case had been a file shoved to the back of a shelf, covered in dust. Detectives had moved on. Some retired, some forgotten. But now, with her bones recovered, no one could deny the truth anymore. This was no disappearance. This was a crime. Inside the department, the old file was pulled out. The folder was thick, stuffed with notes, photos, and transcripts. Detectives sat around a table, flipping through every page. The faded ink carried 8 years of dead ends. Now, each lead had to be looked at again. The new team made a promise. This time, no detail would be ignored. They ordered every piece of evidence to be re-examined. The cruiser, the radio logs, the old interviews, and now the bones. The shack itself was sealed off, treated like a brand new crime scene. Investigators walked its perimeter, gathering soil samples, measuring distances, and scanning for anything missed. The case file, once forgotten, was now the center of everything. The whispers inside the station grew louder. Maybe someone close to her had done this. The hunt for the truth had finally restarted. The remains were sent to the state crime lab. Forensic experts laid out the bones carefully on a long table. At first, the skeleton seemed ordinary, old, weathered, damaged by years in the desert. But then the fractures began to tell a story. On the skull, a break stood out, not from time, not from sand. This was a clean fracture, the kind caused by a heavy blow. On her ribs, more damage. Several had been cracked, the kind of injuries no one walks away from. Experts wrote their findings clearly. Blunt force trauma. The young trooper had not vanished into thin air. She had been struck hard again and again. The evidence was clear. She had been killed. Detectives listened as the lead forensic doctor explained. This wasn't an accident. She didn't get lost. Someone attacked her. The team grew quiet. For 8 years the story had been rumors. Cartels, kidnappers, a runaway. But now science had ended all doubt. She was murdered. The shack had become a dumping ground. The badge, the belt, the handgun, those weren't random. They were left there with her. And now detectives had to face the most painful question. Who had done it? The forensics team didn't just look at the bones. They studied the small items buried with her. Her belt was found half buried near the bones. It wasn't neatly placed. It looked tossed aside like someone ripped it off quickly. The badge, coated in dirt, sat close by. Detectives noticed something. The items weren't laid with care. They were scattered, dropped, as if someone was in a hurry. The position told a story. Whoever killed her didn't plan a careful burial. They panicked. They dragged her inside the shack, stripped away the obvious pieces of her uniform, then left. No shovel marks, no deep grave, just sand, boards, and silence. Her handgun, rusted and useless, had been abandoned too. For detectives, this was huge. If someone planned it, they would have taken the weapon. Instead, the killer left it behind. This wasn't a professional hit. It was messy. Detectives wrote in their notes, likely personal, likely rage. The shack wasn't just a hiding place. It was a dump site chosen in fear. And now, with every inch of dirt studied, the evidence pointed back to one conclusion. Someone close, someone emotional had done this. With proof of murder now undeniable, detectives turned back to the names from 1992. They pulled the list. The gang member she stopped weeks before vanishing. The jealous ex-boyfriend. The fellow trooper who always seemed too close. And others who had been briefly questioned but never charged. Each one was called back in. The gang member, now older, denied everything. He said he barely remembered her. His record showed arrests, but none connected to her disappearance. He stayed cold, unemotional, but his alibi checked out once again. The ex-boyfriend was more complicated. He showed up angry, as if insulted to be dragged back into it. His words were sharp, his tone defensive. Detectives watched carefully. His story hadn't changed. He'd been with friends that night. Those same friends backed him up, even 8 years later. Then came the fellow officer. When his name was brought up, whispers moved through the department. Some older troopers shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. Detectives noticed. He walked in calm, confident, too confident. He claimed he'd been at home that night, sleeping. He said the rumors about him and the young trooper were lies. He said the department had always gossiped about him. But detectives didn't miss the small details. His clenched jaw, the way he avoided saying her name, the flash of irritation when asked about arguments they'd had. On paper he was clear, but in the room he stood out. The case had circled back to him. The whispers grew louder. Retired troopers, now free from the badge, started speaking more openly. They remembered things from 1992 that had never made it into reports. One detail stood out. The missing trooper and this officer had been seen in a heated argument just weeks before she vanished. The argument wasn't over something small. According to one retired sergeant, it was about misconduct. The young trooper had threatened to report him for crossing a line on duty. Another said he'd seen the officer slam his fist into a wall after storming out of the station. The picture that formed was troubling. This wasn't just gossip about closeness or friendship gone bad. This was about anger, control, and a man who didn't like being challenged. Detectives dug into his record. They found small notes, citizen complaints that went nowhere, internal reports that were quietly closed. Nothing big enough to end a career, but enough to paint a pattern. He had a temper, and he had been protected more than once. When detectives pressed the retired troopers for more, some lowered their voices. One admitted, everyone knew he had a dark side, but nobody wanted to push it. She did, and then she disappeared. The more detectives listened, the more they felt the weight of it. For years, suspicion had been there, hiding beneath silence. Now, with the shack, the bones, and the evidence of panic, the rumors no longer sounded like gossip. They sounded like a motive. The fellow officer had been close to her world, too close. And suddenly, he wasn't just a name on a list. He was the prime suspect. Detectives brought him back in. This time, the questions were sharper. They asked about the argument. He denied it. Said people twisted stories made him a villain. His voice stayed firm at first. He leaned back, arms crossed, as if bored with the whole thing. But then detectives pushed harder. They asked him where exactly he was the night she vanished. He repeated what he'd said years ago, at home, asleep. But when asked about who could confirm it, he paused. His face tightened. "Maybe my girlfriend," he said. Then quickly corrected himself. "No, I mean I was alone. Nobody can prove it." Detectives exchanged looks. The story had shifted. They pressed about the missing gun. Could he explain why her weapon had been left behind? He stumbled. "I don't know, maybe the killer panicked." Then came the shack. Did he know about it? Had he ever patrolled near it? He said no. But when detectives showed him old maps and patrol logs, they caught him. His routes had passed just miles from it. His hands started to fidget. He tapped the table. He sighed loudly. He said he didn't remember the details. The confident mask was cracking. Hours into questioning, he grew defensive. His voice rose. He accused detectives of railroading him. He said they'd wanted him to be guilty from the start. But detectives didn't back off. They calmly repeated the facts. The argument, the temper, the patrol routes, the evidence of a rushed cover-up. The officer shifted again. His "I don't remembers" piled up, and with everyone the room grew heavier. It was no longer just suspicion. It was the sound of a story falling apart. Detectives didn't let up. They leaned in, voices steady, facts sharp. They reminded him of the trooper's family still waiting for answers. They repeated the evidence, the belt tossed in panic, the badge in the dirt, the shack just miles from his route. He shifted in his chair, his face red now, sweat rolling down his temple. His denials grew weaker, his words shorter. Finally, the silence broke. He dropped his head into his hands and whispered, "We argued." The detectives froze, waiting. He said it happened on patrol. She had challenged him, pushed him, and tempers exploded. He snapped. His anger boiled over. He struck her hard. He admitted he hadn't meant to kill her. He said it was sudden, uncontrolled. But the result was the same. For years, he'd buried the truth beneath lies. But now, in that small interview room, the secret came out. The missing trooper hadn't just vanished. She had been silenced by the man who was supposed to stand beside her. With his voice shaking, he continued. After she fell, he panicked. He dragged her to his cruiser, then drove into the desert. He searched for a place far enough away, hidden from roads and eyes. That's when he found the old shack. He carried her inside, laid her down, and stripped off the belt, the badge, the gun. He dumped them in the dirt, hoping the scene would look confusing if ever found. Then he left her there under boards and sand like she was nothing. When detectives asked how he lived with it, he gave a chilling answer. "I just went back to work." The next morning he put his uniform on again. He clipped on his badge, the same badge she had worn. He saluted his superiors, answered calls, wrote tickets, and carried on as if nothing had happened. Day after day, year after year, he played the role of loyal trooper. He attended ceremonies, worked cases, even shook the hands of her grieving parents, all while knowing she was out there, abandoned in the desert. For 8 years, he wore the uniform with that secret pressing on his chest. And now the truth was finally out. The moment the confession was written down, detectives moved in. The officer who once wore the Texas badge with pride was now just another criminal in their hands. 2 deputies stepped behind him, pulling his arms back. Cold handcuffs snapped around his wrists. For years, he had walked free, saluted superiors, and shook hands with grieving parents. Now he was being led out of the station, his head down, cameras flashing in the night. It was a stunning fall. When he stepped into the cruiser, people outside gathered, whispering and pointing. Some shouted in anger. Others just stood frozen, unable to believe it was real. The same uniform that had once made him trusted now marked him as a traitor. Detectives said nothing. They knew the family had waited nearly a decade for this moment. For the department, the image of one of their own being shoved into the back of a police car cut deep. His badge, once polished, once respected, had turned into a symbol of betrayal. The trooper who vanished in 1992 was finally given justice, not by miracles, but by the truth finally forcing its way out. The trial opened months later, and it was unlike anything the small Texas county had seen before. The courtroom filled before sunrise. Troopers from across the state arrived in uniform, lining the wooden benches. Townspeople who remembered the night she vanished came too. Reporters crowded in, their cameras flashing as the accused officer was led inside wearing jail orange. The air was tense, every word mattered. Prosecutors laid out the story, the argument, the strike, the shack, the cover-up. They held up photos of the badge found buried in dirt. They showed the belt, the rusted handgun. Each item was a punch to the gut. The defense tried to paint it as a tragic accident, a moment of anger, not a planned killing. But the jury watched the man carefully. They saw his cold stare, the way he avoided eye contact with the family sitting just feet away. Day after day, the evidence stacked higher. Witnesses from inside the department spoke about his temper, his threats, his reputation. Retired troopers told the jury about the argument no one had wanted to talk about back then. Everyone wanted the same thing, justice. When it was their turn to speak, her parents walked slowly to the stand. The courtroom fell silent. Her mother's hands shook as she held a photo of her daughter in uniform. Her voice broke as she described the years of waiting, the porch light left burning, the nights of hopping for a miracle. "We wanted her home," she said softly. "We never wanted it to be like this." Her father stared directly at the man in orange. His voice was steady but heavy. "You sat at our table, you looked us in the eye, all while knowing she was out there in the desert. You stole our daughter. You stole our trust." The officer didn't look back. He kept his eyes fixed on the table, his jaw tight. The room held its breath. For the family, this was the moment when the years of silence finally cracked. The truth was spoken, face to face. The weight of 8 years of doubt, fear, and grief pressed down, but so did the certainty that the world now knew who had done it. Justice was no longer a hope, it was here. When the jury returned, the room went still. The foreman rose, reading the verdict aloud. Guilty. The family held each other tightly. Tears came, some of relief, some of exhaustion. For 8 long years they had prayed for this word, this moment, and now it was here. But justice is complicated. The conviction meant accountability, but it did not bring her back. The empty chair at family dinners was still empty. The voice that once filled the house with laughter was still gone. Her mother whispered through her tears, We should be bringing her home, not this." Detectives nodded respectfully, knowing this was never going to feel like victory. The case was closed, but closure was impossible. For the department, the shame lingered. One of their own had killed another. The badge, once a symbol of honor, now carried a shadow. The family left the courtroom that night holding hands. Reporters swarmed, but their faces said it all. The truth had finally been spoken, but peace had not arrived. Outside, cameras flashed as the family approached the microphones. Her mother stepped forward, clutching the same photo she had held in court. Her voice shook, but her words were steady. "We wanted her home. We never wanted it to be like this." Reporters leaned in, recording every word. She continued, "For years we hoped. For years we believed someone would tell us the truth. Now we know, but knowing doesn't heal. It only reminds us what was stolen." Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, nodding quietly. The mother looked into the cameras, speaking not just to the crowd, but to the world. No family should ever wait this long for answers. No parent should have to wonder if the people sworn to protect them are hiding the truth. The microphone shook with the weight of her words. Her pain was now on record, impossible to ignore. She stepped back, holding her husband's hand. The crowd was silent. The message was clear. Justice had been served, but the wound would never heal. In the weeks that followed, the case forced change. The department launched new systems to track officers' movements during shifts. Logs became stricter, and supervisors were required to check in more often. No one wanted another officer's disappearance to go unanswered for so long. State lawmakers pushed for reforms. Better communication lines between counties were created, ensuring that missing person cases involving law enforcement could not be buried or ignored. Training sessions were added, focusing on accountability and mental health. Officers were reminded the badge was not just a shield but a promise. Breaking that promise carried consequences. Across the state, departments looked inward, asking hard questions. How could one of their own commit such a crime, then hide it in plain sight for nearly a decade? The case became a warning and a turning point. For the family, reforms brought no comfort, but for future officers and for the people they swore to protect, it meant something. Her death would not be forgotten. Her name would not only mark a grave, it would mark change. Inside law enforcement circles, her case became more than a file. It became a warning. In training rooms, instructors spoke her name. They told recruits about the dangers of silence, about what happens when loyalty to each other is placed above loyalty to truth. The message was clear. Betrayal inside the badge destroys more than one life. It breaks the bond between officers. It shakes the trust of the people they are sworn to protect. Veteran troopers admitted that, for years, rumors about her disappearance were ignored. Whispers were brushed aside because no one wanted to believe an officer could harm another. That silence gave her killer the time and space to hide. Now the lesson was written into policy and drilled into culture. Protect each other, yes, but never at the cost of justice. Her story wasn't used to shame new officers. It was used to remind them of the responsibility they carried. The badge was not just metal, it was trust. And if that trust was ever broken again, the damage would last generations. Her case was no longer only history. It was a warning every officer would remember. At the Texas Department of Public Safety, her picture now hangs in the lobby. It's framed simply, placed among other fallen officers. Visitors often stop, reading the name, studying the young face staring back at them. Most don't know the full story, but those who do feel the weight immediately. To the public, the photo shows honor a trooper who gave her life, but to her family it carries more. It is pride and heartbreak, side by side. Her mother has stood before that frame more than once. Each time she whispers the same words, "We found you, but it will never be enough." The picture is more than a memorial. It's a reminder of the fight against corruption, against silence, against forgetting. For the department, it's a symbol of reform. For her family, it's proof that love doesn't fade, even after betrayal. Her face on that wall is not just the end of a story. It is the start of a lesson that will never be forgotten.